Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another video in my Future Fight Vanguard series where I break down the most recent decks from the most recent sets for you guys' viewing pleasure. Today we are continuing on with G-BT14, which is going to be the last set, which is the last main set released before we reset into Standard. For those of you who don't know about that, the game is rebooting itself. It's pretty hard not to know about unless you're just not playing the game and you just follow my videos and you're playing another card game or like another video game in general or some kind of... If you follow my channel and you're not playing Cardfight actively, that's the only way that you wouldn't know about it, in my opinion. But yeah, we're going to be covering the G-BT14 Regalia deck today. So Regalia actually got a couple little interesting things. They remade Minerva from set 15, which is pretty awesome. Original set 15 or original set 14, something like that. But they remade Minerva, which used to be one of the best cards in the game when it had its time, basically. And the Regalia deck has become kind of like I would say the go-to Genesis deck of this set. Obviously, like the Wise Man Loop deck is still pretty good as well, but this is the deck that I have seen most people using since set 14 because people usually use the stuff that gets the most support. So let's start off with our grade 3s. We have 7 grade 3s. 4 of those grade 3s consist of our newest ride target, which is Regalia of Wisdom Angelica. So this is a remade Angelica. It has the exact same name as the previous one. So if you wanted to run some Minerva grade 3s instead of this one, you could ride over it and it could be cross-running and gain 2k to Vanguard consistently. So I haven't seen a lot of people doing that, but I know that some people have done it, and but we're not doing that in this build because we want to ride it and stay on it forever. And it has 2 abilities. The first one is when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, choose a normal unit with Regalia in its name from your drop zone, and you may put it into your soul. If you do, draw a card. So the setup for this actually comes from your starter that you always want to use on grade 2, in my opinion. It can get you some Regalia normal units in your drop zone, or you can guard early. But I just prefer to use the starter so that I don't have to discard cards from my hand that aren't triggers, because I usually want to use them to save them to use their effects. The second ability is when your G unit with Regalia in its name strides, you can counterboss 1, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put a card into your hand, put a card into your soul, and then the rest go into your drop zone. So this skill is really good and really terrible sometimes at the same time. I hate when I check top 4 and all 4 are triggers, because then 1 trigger has to go to my hand, 1 has to go to my drop zone, or sorry, 2 have to go to my drop zone, and 1 has to go to my soul. So it's basically just like really crappy if you get it's even kind of crappy in a situation where you get something that you want to put in your soul, something that you want to put in your hand, and then like 2 heal triggers or something like that, or at least 1 heal trigger, because in this in this version of the build, we don't have a way to put back triggers from our drop zone to our deck. So once our triggers are out of the deck, that's it. Like, we cannot put cards back. And some of you guys, because of that reason, can run Dreaming Dragon instead of our 3rd crit in the deck. That is entirely up to you guys. I like running 12 crit because you want to end the game as fast as possible, and the deck synergizes the best with crits. Then we have 3 Regalia of Activity Izun. Izun's skill is when this card is discarded from hand for the cost of Stride. If you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its name, you can put this card into your soul, and your Vanguard gets 10,000 power. So basically, you want to use Izun to discard when you can, so that you can make your Stride turns bigger, especially when you go into Minerva, because she restands with her own ability. So it gives you more pressure on your opponent. Going on to our grade 2s, we have 12 grade 2s. We have 4 Regalia of Abundance Freya. Freya is a new card from G-BT14. It has 2 abilities. So, the first ability says when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Regalia in its name, you can counterboss 1. If you do, draw a card and you choose up to 2 cards with Regalia in its name from your drop zone and put them into your soul. So builds your soul a little bit from the drop zone, and then also just allows you a free draw for counterboss 1, all for counterboss 1, which is really solid because we don't use that many counterboss in this deck to begin with. The second ability is Generation Break 2 when it's on the Regalia circle. When your Vanguard with Regalia in its name attacks, this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So Freya is best when you're on Minerva for the turn, because when Minerva swings twice, then Freya will be getting 6k for each 3k for each swing, so which is really good. Then we have 3 Regalia of Thoughts Hinil. Hinil has 2 abilities. First one is Regalia Circle. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may have this unit gain 2,000 power, so it can become an 11k attacker. And then if you do have it gain 2,000, at the end of the battle, you put this unit into your soul. So build your soul for the second ability as well. The second ability is when this card is put into your drop zone from the soul. During your turn, you choose one of your units with Regalia in its name, and that unit gets plus 3,000 power. So when it's soul blasted out, it gives 3,000 power to somewhere, and then its first skill allows it to get find a way from your hand to the field to the soul, which is really good. Then we have 3 Regalia of Fate Norn. Norn is just like kind of like a staple in this deck to me, just because it makes your Vanguard so incredibly big, and like just running like as many crit triggers as we run in this deck, like your opponent will want to block Vanguard, and if they don't have 2 PGs, they're gonna have to waste a lot of guarding your attacks to make sure that they don't get crit out of the game. But Regalia of Fate Norn's ability is when this card is put into your drop zone from the soul, choose your Vanguard with Regalia in its name, and that unit gets plus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So this is the Legion mate to a card, but we are not running the Legion. We are purely running this card for its ability, and you just want to get into Soul as much as you can, Soul Blast it out as much as you can, give your Vanguard plus 5,000 as much as you can. And then we have, rounding out our grade 2 lineup, we have 2 Regalia of Poem Bragi. Bragi's skill is Generation Break 1. When this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its name, choose up to 2 cards with Regalia in its card name from your drop zone, put them into your soul, then you choose one of your Vanguards, and that unit and this unit get plus 3,000 for each card put into your soul during this effect. So if you use this card to maximum potential, you play it on the Rearguard Circle, your Generation Break 1, you get to pop the skill, you get to put 2 cards from your drop zone to your soul, because all of your cards are Regalia. So anything that says that it has to have Regalia in the name, we're not going to worry about that, because every card in this deck is Regalia, so we don't have to worry about that. So you put 2 cards from your drop zone into your soul, and then your Vanguard would get 6 and Bragi would get 6. So very good. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Stride Fodders, which is Regalia, Blessing Wind, Flap Angel. It can just be Stride Fodder. It's also our Regalia grade 3 searcher. So if we start with a Flap Angel and an Izun in our hand, we can actually play the Flap Angel to Rearguard Circle to reveal Izun, search Angelica, and then discard a card. So very surprising that they gave this to Regalia, because usually they don't give this type of Stride Fodder to subclans, allowing you to search out the main grade 3. But I'm really happy that they did, because that made this deck a little bit more consistent than it already is. Then we have 4 Regalia Frost Jotun. This is another new card that we have. This is our new Sentinel PG. So it has 3 abilities. The first one is Sentinel, meaning that you can't play more than 4 Sentinel cards in your deck. The second ability PGs a Vanguard or Rearguard Circle with Regalia in its name. So like I said, all of our cards are Regalia, so you don't really worry about that. So for the cost of discarding 1, when this card is placed on the guard circle, it can guard Vanguard or Rearguard Circle indefinitely. PG perfect guard them. And then the third ability is when this card is put from your soul into the drop zone during your turn. If you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its name, you can bind this card face up, and then you choose another Regalia of Frost Jotun from your drop zone and put it into your hand. So it's another one of those PGs where if you have 2 in the drop zone, something happens. You have to have 2 at the same time in the drop zone. So basically, if you have 1 in your drop zone already, and then you Soul Blast out this card, or if you have 2 PGs in your soul, and then you Soul Blast out both PGs, you can actually bind one of the PGs and get one of the PGs back to your hand. So really good for recycling. If you use your PGs to maximum efficiency, you'll be PGing like, I think 7 times efficiently, because you go 4 times, you can get 2 back with the skills, the other 2 get bound, and then you PG, and then you get 1 back with the skill, and then you PG. So that's 7 PG blocks. You won't need to use it that much in the game, but just speaking theoretically, if you were to do that, that's how many perfect PG blocks you would get from doing that. Then we have two of my favorite cards in the deck, Expel Angel and Scold. These are honestly my favorite cards in the deck because they're just so free in my opinion. The first one is Regalia of Talisman, Expel Angel. So both of these cards prevent you from decking out or help you not to deck out. This one has an act ability that says choose 3 normal units with Regalia in its name that are different from the card name of this unit, which means you can't choose Expel Angels from your drop zone. And then you choose 3 cards from your drop zone that are normal units, not triggers. Put them back to the bottom of your deck. If you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its name, this unit gets 3,000 power. And then if you have a face-up Regalia in your G zone, which you always will, because you'll be using Museful skill first and flipping a Museful usually, then you draw a card. So not only does it get 3k to become a 10k booster or a 10k attacker, you can draw a card, so it makes itself free. And if it's on the board already from a previous turn, then it's just a plus. So it's really, really good. And then we have 2 next era Regalia Scold. What Scold's ability is at the end of your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its card name and the number of cards put into your drop zone from your soul, if this turn is 3 or more, then you can choose 3 normal units with Regalia in its name from your drop zone, and then you can draw a card and soul charge 1. So obviously puts more cards back, allows you to refill your soul a little bit after doing a turn of extreme soul blasting, and then it also allows you to draw a card to keep you a little more safe from your opponent's next assault. Moving into our grade zeros, we have our starter, which is Regalia of Dawn, Daylight Angel. Daylight Angel has 2 abilities. The first one is Forerunner, meaning that you can ride upon it and move it back to any rearguard circle you choose, like most starters in the game. The second ability is an activation rearguard skill that says during your main phase, counterblast 1 and put this unit into soul. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 card into soul, and put the rest into the drop zone. And if you put a card with Regalia in its name into your soul, then you draw a card. So makes itself a break even because you lose the starter, you draw a card, but you're also filling your drop zone for Angelica, like I said before. So then for our triggers, we run 12 crit, 4 heal, like I've stated before. We run 4 of the new Kakurahime, which is Regalia of Epicenter Kakurahime. Kakurahime's skill is activation skill, rearguard during your main phase. You can put this card into your soul. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, choose one of your units, it gets 3,000. And then if you have a face-up card in your G-Zone, you draw a card. So this card is a break-even for giving something plus 3,000. The best Margot clone I've ever seen. Just really, really good. I'm surprised that they let you draw a card off of it. But the old Kakurahime does the same thing, except it just moves to the soul, gives one of your Genesis units 3k, and does not draw you a card. So the new one's obviously better than the old one, and it is not a Regalia as well. So we run this Kakurahime, which is Regalia, this Kakurahime. Then we run a Regalia trigger that is vanilla, which is Clear Angel. And then we run our heal triggers, which is Service Regalia Ear. So what Ear does is it is our G-Flip, G-Guardian heal triggers that says, when this unit is discarded for the cost of calling a G-Guardian, we can bind this card face up and bind another heal from our drop zone. And if we do, we countercharge 1 or soul charge 1. So you can fill your resources however you like, and then you can kind of make the decision on what you need to do more. Starting off with our G zone, we have a United Sanctuary Zeroth Dragon. We did discuss this in the previous video of Alt Mile, but we will go over it one more time for the sake of this video, which is Ultima. Its skill is when your unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you counterblast 2. If you do, search your deck for up to 4 cards. Shuffle your deck, you call 2 cards to Rearguard Circle from the 4 that you searched, and then you put the other 2 on the top of the deck in any order, and then all of your units will be chosen for your trigger effects until the end of the turn. So basically what this means is that you're going to search 2 cards that are good on the Rearguard Circle, call them out to help fill out your board a little bit more, and then you stack 2 triggers on top of your deck with the other 2 cards, and then when you check them with the Ultima, then all the trigger effects will go to all your units. So obviously in this deck we run 12 crit, we don't run stand triggers at all, even though Ultima is most efficiently used with a crit and a stand in my opinion, because you get 5 attacks. You can go into Ultima and just put 2 crits on the top, and maybe your opponent's at 3 damage, they have like 3 cards in their hand, and there's no way that they're going to be able to survive Ultima. So you go into Ultima and you search out 2 crits, you call out 2 cards, you fill out a whole board, and then you attack with Ultima, check the 2 crit, maybe even a 3rd one if you're really lucky, and then plus 15 to all your units, or plus 10 to all of your units guaranteed. Then we have our new stride, which is Ultimate Regalia of Almighty Minerva. Minerva has two abilities. First is an act ability that says Soul Blast 3 Regalia cards and choose a face down card with the same name as this unit in your G zone, turn it face up, and this unit gets plus 10,000 and a drive check as a result of using that ability. The second ability is an auto ability that is Generation Break 3. That says when this unit attacks, you can Soul Blast 6 Regalia cards and choose a card from your hand and discard it. If you do, then you stand at the end of the battle, you stand all of your units with Regalia in its name, and this unit gets drive -3. So when you're using this card effectively, you should be having it gain a drive with the first ability and gaining plus 10,000, so I'll have quad drive. And so the first time that it attacks during the turn, it'll have quad drive. Then the second time it attacks, it will have a singular drive because it'll be -3. If for some reason you did not use the first ability, then for the first drive check, it will do 3 drive checks, and then the second one, it will do no drive checks. So obviously, you always want to use the first ability because it's just a lot more worth and has a lot bigger of a chance of killing your opponent. Then we are going on to our 2 Crimson Lotus. This reminds me of Rock Lee for some reason. When I read Crimson Lotus, you guys know what I'm talking about, the Hidden Lotus. The Hidden Bloom blooms twice, that's why we're running 2, obviously. So we have Crimson Lotus Ultimate Regalia Museful. What Museful does is during the main phase, you can choose any card from your G zone, turn it face up. When I use Museful, I always turn another Museful face up. The reason being is because for some of your cards, you want to have face up cards in your G zone. So Kokura Hime just requires a face up card in your G zone to draw a card, but Expel Angel specifically requires a face up Regalia card. So if you want to use Expel Angel skill from stride turn 1, you need to be flipping Museful, at least in this build, because if you flip anything else, you're like kind of messing up the stride flip order. So yeah, you flip a Museful, and then you can Soul Blast any number of your cards. Choose one of your rear guards for each card Soul Blast. They get plus 4,000 power. And then if you Soul Blast 3 cards or more, you can either choose one of 2 options. First one is draw a card. The second one is counter charge. So I usually just take the draw because, like I said, this deck doesn't use counter blast that much. So choosing to counter charge is kind of like foolish in my opinion in this deck when you could just get another card. Who knows what that card could do for you, could save you, but it can't really hurt you. Like, you're drawing an additional card either way that will help you in the long run. Then we run 2 Destruction Deity Beast Vanguard. Its skill is Generation Break 2. When this unit attacks, you can Soul Blast 6 and choose a copy of itself, turn it face up. If you do, this unit gets skill until the end of the turn, and the skill is Vanguard skill. At the beginning of your drive step, look at the top 4 cards from your deck. Search for up to 4 cards from among them, put them on top or bottom, and then put the rest on the bottom. So basically what happens is you end up looking at the top 4 cards. Any triggers that you see, you put them back on top. Any other cards, you put them back on the bottom to ensure the chance that any of your cards that weren't triggers stacked on the top become triggers after that. Another like really interesting thing about this card is that it does it at the beginning of drive step. So if your opponent PGs you, sure, Vanguard can't get through for the turn. But if your opponent does not PG and they do something like 3 to pass or 2 to pass, you can actually check the top 4 cards and be able to tell if you're going to be able to pass that. And since we run 12 crit in this deck, if your opponent does like a 2 or 3 pass, and then you check top 4, you see like 3 or 4 crits there, you stack them back on the top, and you triple drive crits and all Vanguard, your opponent's just going to die. There's no way that they're living that. Then we have 2 Prehistoric Regalia Uther. We do not run Sabreeze in this deck because the early game of this deck is good enough, in my opinion, to hold on when you're fighting a deck that will not allow you to stride. So we have 2 Prehistoric Regalia Uther instead of one of the Sabreezes. So Uther's skill is when it's placed on Vanguard Circle. If you have a heart card with Regalia in its name, counterboss 1, flip a Uther face up. And then if you do, put all cards with Regalia in its name from your drop zone into your soul. And if the number of face-up cards in your Regalia in its card name in your G zone is 2 or more, this unit gets an ability. The ability is act however many times you want during your turn. You can Soul Blast 6, and this unit gets plus 10,000 and a critical until the end of the turn. So you guys will actually see me end the game with this because if you've gone through all of your Minervas and you don't feel comfortable ultimating, but you can't Vanguard because you can't Soul Blast 6, Uther is the perfect thing to go into when you don't have as much soul to execute the rest of your plays, because you'll just basically shove your entire drop zone almost into your soul, and then you'll use the skill as many times as you can. And hopefully Minerva forced all of their PGs out earlier, so this will be attacking for really big with a lot of criticals. So your opponent will most likely die when that happens. Then for our G guards, we run 5 G guards. First one is Witch Queen of Big Achievement Laurier. Laurier is also a recreation of cards created in the past, so the art looks pretty cool here. And then this is our G-Flip Guardian for the Genesis clan, which is when this unit is placed on guard circle, we can choose any G Guardian from our G zone, turn face that is face down, and turn it face up. If we do choose up 2 or more normal units with the same grade, each from your drop zone and your soul, up to a total of 3 cards, and return them to your deck, and this unit gets plus 5,000 shield for each card returned, and then you shuffle your deck. So basically, you can, once you play this card, you flip a unit, you decide on a grade that you're gonna do, and then you put 3 cards from your drop zone or your soul back into your deck with the same grade as that, and then you shuffle your deck, and this unit will become 41, assuming that you put back 3. If you put back 2, it's 36. If you put back 1, it's 31. But if you're just gonna put back not 3, you should probably just go into Ear or Iris, considering that they equal or surpass the guard of Laurier, or equal depending on what you use. So you should just use that if you're in that situation. So then we have 2 Ultimate Regalia of Affection Ear. Its skill is when this unit is placed on guard circle, choose up to 4 cards with different grades from your drop zone, put them into your soul. If you put 2 or more cards this way, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield. And if you put 4 more cards this way, this unit gets plus 10,000 shield. So if you G-Guard with this card and you put in a grade 0, a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3, then that's 4 different grades, and this unit will get plus 15k shield, so it will be 41k block. If you only put 2 in, then it's only 31, and in that case, you should just G-Guard into Iris. Speaking of Iris, its skill is when it's placed on guard circle, choose up to 3 cards from your drop zone, put them into your soul. If 3 cards were put, then this unit gets plus 5,000 shield. So guards for 31 in exchange for putting 3 cards from your drop zone into your soul. So we're gonna get started with the games here as our card fight area opens itself back up. There it is. So we are gonna load Regalia game 1. So we're playing against Gurgwit. As usual, my test buddy likes to play Gurgwit, so that's why we're playing against Gurgwit so much. If you guys have been watching my most recent days of videos and you're like, why is there so much Gurgwit? That's why. But we draw a card from our starter, we play a booster, and we attack. Our opponent checks a crit, attacks us, doesn't check anything, and then we don't have a grade 3, so we just decide to stay on grade 2 and attack, crit. My opponent G-Guards and gets Militant Dragon, puts 2 from the hand into the bind zone, and then I believe they forgot to put 2 G units, which I completely overlooked, and I'm pretty sure he overlooked it as well. But he attacked with rear guard, we guarded, and then he checks double sand trigger, so we take a damage, it's a heal, and then we take a damage, it's Angelica, which is unfortunate because we needed that. So next turn we draw, we don't draw grade 3, and we have to G assist, but we missed the G assist, unlike our opponent, and then our opponent checks a heal on the next turn and a PG, which is like ultimate defense, and then we have to guard with 2 cards. So we G assist again. This time we get into Angelica. We remove 2 cards, and then we remove 2 G units. I was gonna remove Ultima, but then I decided to remove Uther instead. So we use Angelica's skill, Soul Blast from the drop zone, draw a card. We use Angelica's skill, put 1 card into soul, put 1 in the hand, other 2 into drop. We use Museful skill to Soul Blast 3. One of our rear guards gets +4, we draw a card. And then Henio's skill gives 6k to Vanguard. We use Expel Angel skill to draw a card. Then we use Expel Angel skill again. Bottom 3 again, it gets 3, draw a card. And then we attack for 46. So our opponent PGs, we check 1, check 2, a heal trigger. So we need that. And then we check a crit. All effects to rear guard as well. So we attack Vanguard for 20, he guards it. Then he goes into Gurgwit. He uses the skill, everything's Unite now. So attacks for 18 and attacks for 48. We G-guard into ear. Oh, we decided to switch out ear actually with Iris. We put 3 in with Iris, and then we double Iris basically, and then we put 3 more in with Iris, and then we no pass it. So he checks a heal trigger, puts it a rear guard, checks a crit trigger, puts it a rear guard, and then was hoping to check a stand, but did not check it. Thank goodness for us. So we stride into Minerva. We use the skill top 4, put 1 to soul, put 1 to hand, and put 2 to drop. We use the skill of Minerva to soul blast 3, flip, and then we use the skill of Expel Angel, draw a card, put 3 back. Then we call, and we use Freya's skill to draw a card, put 2 cards from drop zone into soul. Then we call one of our stride fighters. Then we attack for 16. Then we attack for 16, and then we attack for 51. We soul blast 6, and then we discard a card. At the end of the battle, all of our Regalia units will restand. So we do check a heal trigger. Thank goodness we heal again. And we check 4, and then we restand all of our rear guards. We attack for 16 to get guarded. We attack with Vanguard, we crit, and then we attack for 32 with a crit. And our opponent responds by G-guarding with Slay Me, putting a card back on the guard circle for 36. And then our opponent strides again, goes into Glorious Raining Dragon, uses the skill to call 2 cards out, puts a card to bottom, and then attacks for 9 to our rear guard circle. We we just block it. Attacks Vanguard, we take it, and then uses the skill of Glorious Raining to call out 4 cards, put the rest back, counter charge and soul charge because he called more than 4. Then he uses Periton skill, or not Periton, but Bellamore skill. It's basically Flying Periton from Pale Moon, if you guys know what that is. But we G-guard one side that has a crit. We put 4 into the drop, and then or 4 into the soul, and then we check a crit trigger as our defensive, and then we stride, use Angelica skill, card to soul, card to hand, 2 to bot. We use the skill of Minerva to soul blast 3 and activated skill, and then we actually miscalculated. Otherwise I would have played this either the Bragi. I probably would have played Bragi over Norn, because then we would have put Bragi in over Norn. But I wasn't checking my soul for this first game of us playing, and it's the first game that I really played this deck. So we actually attacked a rear guard, and then attacked a Vanguard. And then at the end of the battle, I realized that I didn't have 6 in my soul. So that really sucked, because we would have just instantly won the game looking at his hand. But we go to drive check 4. And we drive check 4 vanilla units. So yeah, then we're just forced to pass turn, which is unfortunate. Our opponent goes into a Gurglet stride again. We have no G-Guardians or anything like that to save us, and we can't guard with PGs in our hand with this Gurglet, so kind of unfortunate. Even if he would have survived our last assault, it would have he would have had no cards in his hand to create Unite, so and he might not have been able to stride either, so that's a thing. But our opponent attacks for 26, 28. We look at our hand, and we ultimately decide that we would not be able to guard Vanguard, so we just take the attack, and then we lose the first game because of a gigantic misplay in our part. So basically I misplay so that you guys don't have to, so you guys take that to heart if you're playing Regalia. Always check your soul before you go into your plays, because I was 1 soul off from ending the game basically, which would be really frustrating, I'd imagine, in like a tournament or something. So then for game 2, playing against Gurglet again, we ride, we call back. Our opponent attacks for 12, we get crit. We check double crit trigger as our damage. We ride, we use our starter skill, put 2 cards in the drop, and then we draw a card. Then our opponent rides, attacks us, we take it. And then we ride Angelica, call, and then we attack for 11. We get a crit to Vanguard, power to Rearguard, and our opponent checks double triggers because they're blessed. And then rides Gurgwit the next turn. He uses the stride skill, top 4, call a card, and then call a card from top as rest. Then he calls out a Gigatech Ringer, uses Coil skill to call out a Horsa, and then he uses the skill of Ringer to give all the powers. So he gives 2k from Salonius, 2k from Coel, and then 5k from Ringer. He attacks with Rearguard, then he attacks with Vanguard, checks no triggers, thank goodness for me, because I no guarded that, we could have got sacked. And then we guard the last one. We stride into Museful. We use the skill to put a Braggy to put 2 cards from drop in. And then we decide to just use the skill of Museful. Soul Blast 3, draw a card, and then we get 5,000 of Vanguard and 3,000 of Rearguard because of Heniel and Norn. So we use the skill of our crit trigger, shove it in Soul, give a unit plus 3k, and then we draw a card. So then we attack a Vanguard, check 1, 2, 3, no triggers. Our opponent checks a stand, and uses Salonius skill to call out top 2. So he goes into second Gurgwit stride. He plays a card from his hand. He uses Carinus, and then he uses the skill of Henrius, call out a card. They both get plus 3. And then he swings for 34 to Vanguard. We take it. We get a heal trigger. We heal a damage. Our opponent attacks for 46 since one of his rear guards is gone. We G-Guard into Laurier. We use the skill to put 3 into the deck, and we shuffle for 46, and then no pass after that. So our opponent checks a crit trigger, a heal trigger, puts it to rear guard, and then checks a Quill. And then our opponent attacks for 29. We G-Guard, or actually we just guarded. But we use the skill of Angelica, and then we use the skill of Minerva. Soul Blast 3, activated skill. We use the skill of the PG to get back to the hand. We use the skill of Freya to draw a card, put 2 cards from drop zone into the soul. We play 2 cards just to make this turn as effective as we can. So we attack for 14 to Vanguard. Then we attack for 15 to Vanguard. And then we attack for 43. We Soul Blast 6. We use the skill of Norn to give our Vanguard plus 5,000, so it's 48. And then we check 3. Actually, we check 4. So we check 4, there's no triggers. All of our rear guards restand. We attack for 15. Then we attack with Vanguard. We check a Heniel. And then we attack Vanguard for 21. End of the turn, we use Scold. Put back 3 normal units. Draw a card, Soul Charge. So our opponent strides with 2 cards, I believe. Goes into Heavenly Law Gurgwit. So this is where the powers start to get really, really big and ridiculous. Our opponent calls Carinus, calls Horsa back, and then I think our opponent is deciding what they want to do for their turn. So our opponent activates their stride skill and plays Quill on the rearguard circle. Everything gets plus 10,000 because there's 5 Gurgwits face up in the G zone. So everything gets plus 10,000. Thank goodness we have 2 PGs and 2 heals in our hand, because otherwise we'd be really scared of this turn actually. So our opponent attacks us for 29, we take that. Our opponent attacks us for 21. We G-Guard that, putting 3 cards into Soul, 2 Norns, and a crit trigger. We use the heal trigger to countercharge. And then our opponent attacks for 38, uses the skill to check the top 7 and call 1 to the board. He puts the other cards back to his deck and shuffles. And then he uses the skill of Barrymore to counterboss 1, call, and then we PG the Vanguard, dropping a card. Our opponent checks PG, Horsa, PG, and then we G-guard, and we put 4 cards 0, 1, 2, 3 in the soul, so it guards for 41. We stride for turn into Minerva, this time making sure not to make a mistake. We put Izun into the soul, plus 10. We put a card in the soul, card into hand, and 2 cards in the drop zone from Angelica. And then we use Minerva skill, Soul Blast 3. And then our Vanguard gets 10k. And then our Rearguard gets 3k, which is braggy. We replace the PG with a card. We put back 3 normal units. We draw a card and it gets plus 10. And then this time we check our soul. We have more than enough soul to do Minerva's effect. So then we attack for 19. Our opponent guards with 2 cards. Then we attack for 63. Soul Blast 6 and discard a card. And then our opponent PGs it, checking 1, 2, 3, and 4. No triggers. Everything restands. Attack for 17, attack for 68, PG'd, and then attack for 25. Uses a least skill. To call a card to the guard circle. And then at the end of that battle, it goes to the rearguard circle. So we pass turn over to our opponent. We use Scold ability to put back 3, and then we draw a card and soul charge. Then our opponent draws a grade 0, so he can't stride. He attacks us for 11, we intercept. He attacks us for 16, checks the top 3, calls out a stride fodder. So we guard with 2 cards, and then we get attacked for 18. Our opponent checks 2 cards, one's a stand trigger. Until he stands the rearguard behind the stride fodder and attacks us, we guard with 2 cards. We stride. This time we stride into Uther. We use the skill to counterblast 1 and flip a Uther, and then we put all of our Regalias from drop zone into our soul. So you guys can just see all of that wonderful soul charging that's going on. Then we use the skill of Uther to Soul Blast 6. And then give plus 10k and a crit. We Soul Blast 6 plus 10k and a crit. And we Soul Blast 6 plus 10k and a crit. And we use Expel Angel to put back 3, draw a card. Then we call, use the skill, counterblast, draw a card, put 2 cards from soul in, and call a card. And we actually could have used the skill of Uther just one more time, but we didn't really need to. Our opponent couldn't guard it no matter how many times you look at it. Our opponent could not guard that many with a crit. He just took the first rearguard attack. Kind of similar to how in the first game, I just took that rearguard Gurguit attack because I knew that there was no way that I was going to live. So, no point in continuing struggling on in the game when you can't even be sure that you will live. Moving on to game 3, we have Regalia game 3, finishes up the 2 out of 3 against Gurguit. We ride, we attack for 12, our opponent checks a crit, giving crit to Vanguard. Our opponent attacks for 7, and then attacks, we check a critical. We ride a grade 2, we use the starter skill. We unfortunately miss a heal, but we check a heal. And then our opponent attacks Vanguard, we take a damage. We ride Angelica, we put a card to soul, draw a card. Then we stride, we use the skill of Angelica, get a card, and we call out cards, and then we use Museful skill to flip, to G-flip, and then give 4k, 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 draw a card. And there's nothing else we can really do, so we attack 9 to Rearguard, 41 to Vanguard, and then we check a crit. I was honestly surprised that we didn't double crit him this early in the game, because running 12 crit usually hurts like that when your opponent's at 3 damage. But our opponent does not die. They instead get put to 5, which honestly 5 is where you want them to be at when you're going to go into Minerva anyways, as long as they don't heal. So our opponent's doing all of his Gurgwit shenanigans, and then he calls a card, Carinus replaces it, or sorry, moves it back and calls, and then he flips with Gurgwit skill to get Quad Drive. He attacks for 23, then with Vanguard, we no guard riskily, but it was high risk, high reward, so we take 2 damage, and he doesn't kill us. We put power to Vanguard, and then he guards. So this turn, we stride with Uzun. We put Uzun to Soul, 10k to Minerva. We use the skill of Angelica, 1 card to Soul, 1 card to hand, and 2 to drop. Then we use the skill of Minerva, Soul Blast 3, plus 10,000 more. Then we use Braggy, put 2 cards into Soul, plus 6k to Vanguard and Regalia. Then we put a crit in to put our Soul to 6. Because we learned from that first game. And then we use Expel Angel to make it 10k, and we draw a card. So we attack for 20 to Vanguard, and then 21 to Vanguard. Our opponent guards with 2 cards. We attack, we Soul Blast 6, and we discard a card. We use the skill to give 3k to something. We decide to give it to Vanguard. Our opponent PGs using the Salonius, getting it off the top of the deck. So we check a crit trigger, we put crit to Vanguard, power to rear, and then we use the skill to restand everything, and then we attack for 18. Then we attack our opponent no guards, and they take 2 damage because Minerva had a crit on it. So like I said, you want to crit your opponent in the early game so that it gets them to a point where they're at 5 damage and they can't really block Minerva efficiently. So yeah, with that being said, that has been the FutureFight for the Minerva New Genesis Regalia deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video. It helps a lot more than you guys think. Like that like button, love that like button, smash that like button, and be sure to also subscribe to stay updated with the channel and support. Also, if you're already subscribed, be sure to click the bell button so that you can get a notification every time a new video goes up on the channel. You guys can check the description down below for our social media links, which are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you guys want to support the channel a little more than liking and subscribing, then the links in our Patreon to our Patreon and our merch store are also down in the description down below as well. And with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.